Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's not Sunday without this guy, the one and only, the legend, the great Matt Hladek from Men's Journal. We love having him on with us each and every Sunday. Matt, I'm going to dig right into it. Mini camp is this week across the NFL. Obviously, OTAs are important. You set a lot of groundwork, but in mandatory mini camp, you actually set the stage for training camp. And guys, you can tell a lot about a team on their mental approach to mini camp. And I'm just curious. I have every year I've covered the Raiders because it's a different kind of duck. When I covered the Lions, there was really never expectations there. With Raider fans, there's expectations every year. But this is the first year that I've covered them where those expectations are really matched by the players. Now, I'm not saying that the players were not excited in previous years. I'm not saying they didn't want to do it. None of that. That's not the issue. But the fans are jacked up about Pete Carroll and all the changes. And I'm going to tell you something. I think the players and it's not because the fans are more jacked up. Let's talk about mini camp expectations, please.
Yeah, I think this is that time of the year where, as you said, you start to get into stuff that's mandatory where your whole team is there. You're getting closer to training camp. So I think the itch is starting to build for NFL fans. And I think understandably, justifiably for the Raiders, when you have a new regime coming in, especially one where the head coach is a guy who has won a Super Bowl before, coached in multiple Super Bowls, has the type of success and the resume that Pete Carroll has, there's a lot of excitement building up. So I think it's a good sign, as based on your reporting. You said the players are kind of matching that enthusiasm and matching that sort of that vibe. So I think it's about par for the course. What I would expect. I think this time of the year, you want to see that type of build up for your team. And I think the fact that the Raiders are building towards a new day in their organization helps that.
I want to get your take because I look at the Raiders under a microscope. You look at the league macroly. That's why I love having you on. But something has really struck me, and I want your thoughts on it. Um, I have seen players come in and buy into a new coach. Absolutely, I've seen it a lot. I've seen players come in and like a coach and be excited about him and all that kind of stuff. I have never seen a coach come in where everybody's on the same page and every guy you talk to privately off the record, which is when they tell you the truth, loves this guy. And they all use that term. And I mean, I've heard them say, like I remember with Antonio, man, we really like Antonio. When he got the job, it was a lot of excitement. Um, but with him, I mean, I literally, Shannon and I are driving down the road the other day and got a call from a player. So I answered it on the blue teeth. And um, I, we're just chatting and I got off the phone and she says to me, I, everybody talks about how much they love this guy. And I'm like, I know they do. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? She's like, I've never heard that. It Let's talk about the Pete Carroll effect on these players, please.
Well, I think it just is a guy who brings in that cachet of having the experience that he has, having the amount of wins on his resume that he has. And I think that you mentioned it earlier in an earlier episode about how comfortable he is being himself and about being,
Mm-hmm.
what his vision for what his program, for what his team should look like. And I think that's, the byproduct of having been around the NFL and established yourself for so long. And I think, it's a good thing. I think that is, you know, sort of, indicative of his message getting through. And now listen, again, obviously there's always a buzz for a new coach and there's always sort of, you know, there's high hopes for any new regime. But I think the fact that you're getting that type of overwhelming enthusiasm and response uh, is a good thing, and I think it's also again indicative of the type of coach that and leader Pete Carroll is.
I want to read you a text I got from a Raider player, and I'd like you to comment on it. Okay. So recently on a podcast, I made the comment that we live in a synthetic world. Be authentic, and the importance of being authentic. And this is what the person texted me. Just got done listening to your podcast where you talked about in a synthetic world, be authentic. Boy, is that not the truth. I have to tell you, I had heard so much about Pete Carroll, I was skeptical. I wondered how much maybe was carnival-ish and how much was going to be real. Hondo, he is the most authentic person I have ever met. That's
I think,
big.
I mean, that is pretty big, and I think that last line is the most important thing. The authenticity factor is such a big deal because you have to be authentic. I think the first thing that players can kind of suss out, especially at the professional level, is if a coach is kind of BSing his way or comes off as fake. So you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. You can't try to lead or present yourself in a way that isn't real. And I think that the fact that Pete Carroll is who he is, and he can say, listen, the way I've done things, the way I've run things has led to all of this success over time. Why, I don't need to be anybody but myself. And I think that that's what you're seeing. And I think that of all the glowing parts of that message from that player, I think that last part is the most important thing.
Yeah. That was a stunning text. That was a really stunning text. Not because I dislike Pete, I don't in the least bit. I just think when you can get a locker room to buy into you that fast, that's pretty cool. All right,
Mhm.
I want to turn attention. We're going to still come back to the Raiders, but I want to talk about a little NFL. No surprise, Aaron Rodgers is going to the Steelers. We've been saying that was the expectation. I know a lot of people tried to hype up Steeler fans, and he's playing them. He wasn't, and he's now there. Here is my. I was asked recently on a national interview what I think is a fair expectation of the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to tell you what I said, and I'd love you to tell me if I'm right. They have gone to the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Mason. I mean, they go to the playoffs. Kenny Pickett. So getting to the playoffs when you're a Hall of Fame quarterback, that's not the expectation. To me, the expectation is he needs to at least win a playoff game.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's unfair when you look at all of the plethora of marginal or older players that they've done it with. I don't think that's unfair to set that expectation with that roster, with that coaching staff, with Aaron Rodgers. Am I asking too much of him?
No, I think you look at, over the last 8 seasons, the Steelers have won plenty of regular season games with different quarterbacks, and they've been in the playoffs multiple times, and they've been a consistently good franchise. They haven't won a playoff game. The last time they won a playoff game was the 2016 season, so the playoffs in January of 2017 when they got to the AFC title game. Um, they've been, had been favored at home and lost playoff games since then to the Browns, to the Jaguars. Always seem they kind of now they've been getting wild card and they go on the road and get all overmatched by last year was Baltimore. In the past, it's been the Chiefs. So getting to the playoffs is kind of like the bare minimum. Like, I mean, at this point, people think if you could put me or you back there at quarterback and Mike Tomlin could figure out how to win, 8, 9 games and keep them in the hunt and maybe get them to the playoffs. I think that they have to at least, win a playoff game. I think that, listen, I think it's unreasonable to expect them both off of what Aaron Rodgers is now as a player and what their roster is to win, to win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl or make a deep playoff run. But, I think it's reasonable to say, hey, can we compete for the division title? And even if we don't win the division title, can we maybe get a road playoff win? Like, can we win a playoff game and at least extend our season a little bit and feel like this investment, even if it's only a 1-year investment, was worth it.
I agree. Who's going to have a bigger impact on the Steelers in 2025? Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, or Aaron Rodgers?
I think you have to say Aaron Rodgers. I just think that they are leaning on this guy, and they waited this long in the offseason for him, that he was clearly the priority early on, and they wanted him. And I think we knew it was going to come down to he was going to go to Pittsburgh, um, but they waited it out for him. They were willing to wait it out, and I think he is going to be the difference in them either being just a solid competitive team in the AFC and one that can maybe actually win a game in January. To me, him playing well is difference between what we just discussed, either getting to the playoffs in January and actually being able to win a game when you're there.
So let's go to the NFL in totality. Mini camps have become massively important. A lot of players are exercise the O and OTAs and whatever, but mandatory mini camps. I've said this to you before. I've had successful coaches and general managers tell me, you don't win Super Bowls in June and July, but you can lose them. And I reached out to several this week and just said, tell me what are your biggest thoughts on mini camps? Not necessarily yours, but mini camps in general. And all of them said the it sets the groundwork for a successful training camp. You get to really look and say, okay, we need to work on this. We probably need to look at a trade. Wow, here's a guy. Let's get some extra time with him in pads, all of that kind of stuff. I think, and each of them said, I said, how important are mini camps? And of the men I reached out to, which was several, everyone said unheralded, not talked about enough, important launch pad was what one guy called it. I mean, these mini camps now have become extremely important for success. Would you break that down?
Yeah, I think like that guy said, it is about setting a tone and kind of setting, the building blocks for the season. Especially if you have a new regime or a regime that's still kind of young, that's only been there a year or two. You have to kind of lay that groundwork, lay that foundation. It's different. It's different mini camp for Pete Carroll with the Raiders than it is for Andy Reid with the Chiefs, who's has completely established himself, or Nick Sirianni, whose team just won the Super Bowl. But still, even with those guys, even with that being said, those guys are trying to get into it, and they're trying to say, hey, we had all the success last year, but this is a new season. We have to go about it this way, and this is what we have to do. So obviously training camp is the big thing in the summer with good reason. And, that's when things will really pick up in terms of, day to day. People are going to be wondering what the quarterbacks do, or wondering who's looking good, who's looking bad, and, updated 53-man roster projections all the time. But the mini camp is very important. And I think it's really a pivotal moment in the off season, because it lets you know that the real deal of the season is right around the corner.
Hard Knocks. You and I are both fans. We've talked about this for many, many, many years. We love Hard Knocks. What are your thoughts on Hard Knocks this year?
I like, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's with the Bears, right? The preseason one with the Bears should be interesting, especially considering they have new head coach Ben Johnson, who was the it coach on the market, and then you have Caleb Williams, who had some ups and downs as a rookie. And there was, the story about how he originally didn't even want to go to the Bears. Now, listen again, and I've talked about this. You've talked about this on here. The footage that you see is in the preseason Hard Knocks is different from what it used to be. There's more control over what teams show. They don't want to show as much, interesting stuff. So it is subdued, so to speak, but it still can leave you in interesting content. And then in the in-season one this year, the NFC East is fun because, you have the defending Super Bowl champs, and then you have the not the Guardians, the Commanders, who are um, up and coming, had that big run to the NFC title game last year, and have Jaden Daniels potentially looking like a force in the NFC for years to come. The Cowboys always make headlines, always have some type of fun story. And then the Giants, who
Maybe
were
some
on
drama there.
Hard Knocks in the offseason last year, and that became a major storyline. And they have a head coach and a GM who are on the hot seat. So you have four teams with four distinct storylines to talk about there on the in-season version. Not to mention, like we just talked about, the preseason version with the Bears.
So I'm going to ask you, what rookie is going to have the biggest impact on the NFL this year?
Give me 1 second to think that through. I am going to say Travis Hunter. I just think that there's a couple of other options of guys near the top of the draft. I expect Cam Ward to start from day one in Tennessee. I think Abdul Carter is going to be a really good pro right away for the Giants. I think Ashton Genty is going to be really good for the Raiders right away. But I think Travis Hunter is going to be the guy who I think, I'm not saying he's going to single-handedly turn the Jaguars franchise around, but I think you're going to see early on why they were willing to trade up a few spots to get him, because I think he's going to have that type of multifaceted impact.
I really like Doug Peterson, and I think his failure in Jacksonville had more to do with the GM than with him. But I'm just curious. I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. I think he's a really good quarterback. But is this the year we see Trevor become the Trevor we thought he would be? Because I think it's fair to say he's not been that. Is it fair to say this is the year Trevor Lawrence becomes the Trevor Lawrence?
I think it's possible that he does that. I think it's a big year for him because now you have Liam Cohen, who's a QB friendly guy, or supposed to be a QB friendly guy. He's an offensive minded coach. You saw the work he did with Baker Mayfield as his OC with the Bucks. They're bringing him in a large part because of his offensive expertise and believing what he can do with Trevor Lawrence. So I think that this is a pivotal year for Trevor Lawrence. I think for the sake of the Jaguars, they hope he takes that next step.
All right. I was talking to an NFL person this week, and they told me something that raised my eyebrows. And I have not discussed it on purpose. I was waiting to talk with you about it. And he said, there's been a lot of talk, the NFL wanting to have a international team. And he goes, I don't think that's going to happen. And he told me, he's very blunt, I don't think it's going to happen. I said, all right, so what do you think they're going to do? Because I don't think they're going to get rid of their desire to keep growing internationally. He told me that within a decade, he said by the 2035 season, he expects every NFL team will play one game internationally every year. That kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. I don't think that's going to go over well. I would love your thoughts. What do you think of what this NFL told me? Person said his opinion. He doesn't think there'll be a permanent international franchise just because he got into a lot of stuff. We'll get into later why on another podcast. But he did say within 10 years, he expects every team playing one game a year internationally. Would love your thoughts.
Well, we've seen the growing international slate in recent years, not just increasing the amount of games they play in London, but going to Germany now every year, going to Brazil a couple of years in a row. First game coming up in Madrid, first game ever coming up in Ireland. So they're expanding every year internationally. Logistically, that would be tough because you have to work out travel schedules and bye weeks and all that type of stuff around the international schedules. But it's not the craziest thing to me because you're seeing how much the NFL clearly wants to expand internationally. I don't think they're going to have an international team, even though people have said for years, Jaguars are going to move to London and whatnot. I think that would be a little too much too tough to figure out from a scheduling standpoint and a logistical standpoint. But I could see what this guy's saying. If it's not every team, I think you're going to still see a significantly larger portion of the league playing internationally on a yearly basis.
Something that he also told me is the NFL is going to have to work out some compensation because there's some of these cities with publicly financed stadiums based on X amount of home
Mm,
games. And he said that's going to be a real concern. That's why he didn't say each team will host one. But if there's 16 international games, and let's say you have a publicly funded stadium like the
mm.
in Detroit, and they're like, no, we're not willing to give up a home game, so they would have to be the road game. Just a lot of logistics, and of course, it all comes down to money, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. That the green is the almighty dollar is the big thing. That's always the driving force. It seems like for any professional league, definitely the NFL.
Last question for me, and we're done for today. The schedule comes out, and it doesn't impact me because I'm at every game. But now you have to go buy all these streaming services to see NFL games. I keep asking you this question, it seems like every year. At some point, is the NFL going to push the rubber band so far it snaps? Because this is the most I've ever heard from fans. I'm not going to go buy Prime. I'm not going to go buy, I'm trying to remember what's the one. Is it
Peacock,
Peacock?
yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube
I don't even know what
TV,
that. I'm sorry, what?
YouTube, Netflix.
Yeah. Like one guy said, I have Comcast. I'm not going to go buy YouTube TV. I'm not. I'm not going to get Netflix. I'm not going to go get whatever you call that Peacock. I mean, my point is, are they so big it doesn't matter? Because you've heard me say this. The only person that can kill the NFL is the NFL. Are they pushing the envelope in a healthy way, or are they getting close to snapping the rubber band?
I kind of think they're going over the top with the amount of different games and streaming services, similar to how I feel Major League Baseball is too. Um, but I don't think they're at a point yet where it's a danger to the league and a danger to the bottom line too much. I just think that a lot of people are going to complain now, but I wouldn't be surprised if some people who are saying they won't do it now change their minds and either rank the, get a free trial or steal or ask for their buddy or family member's login or something like that. There's going to be enough people making arrangements um, to watch these games, I think, still, but to with a point where it's not a big deal.
Oh yeah, and NFL Sunday Ticket. I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah. Shannon, she's already gone through all the Raider schedule. We're buying some new streaming service just so she doesn't miss a Raider game. I got to tell you, it didn't affect our family, but I certainly anticipate it to affect a lot of families. Matt, can you tell everybody where to find you on social media, please, brother?
Yes, you can find me at Matt Halatic 919 on X or Twitter or whatever you're calling it. And I'm always there talking about some ball. And you can find me on Men's Journal where I'm writing about sports and a little bit of everything else these days.
Thanks, Matt.
Anytime.